Hey, welcome to The Perspective. Can business and ministry cohabitate? I believe they can, but we're going to be talking about it today as we are throughout this whole week. How do we understand business in light of the political turmoil, the financial instability that seems to be sweeping across both Canada and the United States, and for that fact, all throughout the world? We're going to be looking at the whole issue of, is money the root of all evil, or how can we handle it? And here to help us today is a guest that's returning, Richard Magnussen, from the amazing province of Ontario, Canada. Richard has written a book called Going Big. It's an incredible story. We're going to make available to the first 10 people that write to us here at The Perspective a free copy of Richard's book. So what's it all about? Well, it's a testimony to the power of legacy and mentorship. And in the book, we're going to see how Richard took the reins of the family business in 1970, how it started. This furniture manufacturing company started in a chicken coop, and it's grown to something of incredible proportions throughout the world. We're going to hear about it in just a moment. But today, welcome back, Richard Magnussen. Richard, so glad you're with us today. And yeah, thanks for being with us. I love the line that, you took the business, your dad started it in a chicken coop. And having a bit of rural experience myself, I can just imagine what it was like. Take us back to how you took over the reins of the company and what it's become today.
Well, as you had just mentioned, my dad started the business in a chicken coop during the Depression because he lost his job. And from there, he had half the chicken coop was machinery and the other half he lived in it. So he had some challenging times, but he grew the business. And I started in 1970, as you had suggested. I grew up in the business, so I didn't know anything else. And when I got to the point where I was trying to make career decisions, my dad said, look, I want to retire. It's a small business, but if you're interested in it, you should maybe make that decision. So I thought, well, this might be a boring business. The annual sales were $38,000 a year. And so it was pretty small. But I said, if it gets too boring, I can find something else to do. But
you could raise chickens.
My dad just smiled, didn't say any more than that. And, it never became boring. It's what you make of it, I guess.
But explain just a little bit of the nature of the business. So you make furniture and you're able to sell it to all sorts of large wholesalers. But you started here in Ontario, but you've now moved the headquarters into the States, and a lot of the manufacturing is done in other countries.
Yes. So we manufactured in a small town. We grew the business in Waterloo, and then we moved it to a small town in Hamburg, bought a plant, and increased the business significantly domestically. And then we looked at the global picture of where are we going. I really had no intention of being an international company, or it wasn't in my vision. But all the pieces came together. A lot of them came together because we were pushed out of certain things. And so we grew the business. And when I left in 2016, we were producing 150,000 pieces of furniture a month. So from very humble beginnings to where I left off, it was just a testimony to God. And I give him all the credit for it.
You've just made some interesting statements. First, the fact that you're producing 150,000 pieces of furniture when you left the company and handed it over to the family. I mean, my goodness, I would be all month trying to just build a 3-legged stool. So we're not even going to go down that alley. But you talk about your faith in Christ. Take me back to when you first realized that your business was a ministry. How did you process that?
Well, when I got involved in the business and I was concerned it might be boring, it was anything but that. And I remember growing the business, and we were increasing by large percentages. When the business is small, it's easy to grow by large percentages. And I remember coming to a point in my life that I was being pulled in so many different ways that I got on the floor on my knees in this small little shop, which I only had 2 part-time people. And I said, Lord, I want to commit this business to you because it's way over my ability. And I was very sincere about that. And I turned it over to him, and I considered him to be my partner. And he had different ways of teaching me than I anticipated. One was drilling into finances that I was hanging on to, figured I would become a donor someday when I became wealthy. And of course, his plan was different. So we worked through that, and the business grew. And I took the business to the Lord every day and tried to be sensitive to his will. He chooses to use people. And so it's been amazing how God has moved and stretched me way beyond my thinking. But it was clear as I grew the business that I did not separate ministry and building a business, because I think some people silo the difference between church and Sunday and their business. And I really believe that it's really a combination of all of it. We can't separate it. And so that's been my experience. And looking back, it's been amazing what God has done through us.
You know, as you talk about that, I'd like to unpack it more in the second part of our conversation today. But when you just talk about growing the business and exercising your faith in a very practical way, you have a lot of employees. I think you had about 300 employees and about 10,000 contract workers. So that's mind-boggling. How did your faith values interface with the different people you're working with?
Well, I really was pretty good on collaborating with people. You know, business is people are relationships, and relationships are built on integrity. And I used to say to my wife, Marilyn, that I have so many good people that would die on a hill for me. I got to make sure it's the right hill as we go through the business. And so a friend of mine got me started reading Proverbs in the Bible. So there's 31 chapters, and I would read on the first day of the month, I'd read chapter 1. And I went through that for probably 10 years. I didn't memorize Proverbs, but I really have a good handle on what it has to say and the wisdom that's there. And so I would amazingly think of things that came out of a business meeting or whatever, of what Proverbs had to say, the wisdom that was there. And I don't want to over spiritualize that, but I really do believe God gave me a lot of wisdom through Proverbs and spending some time in his word.
When you had to make major decisions to grow the business, how did you tie in your faith? I know you've talked about praying. Would you consult other people for advice or wisdom, or did God speak to you in your heart? Did you take what some people would call crazy steps of faith?
Well, I don't think they were crazy. You know, the scripture, Proverbs says iron sharpens iron. And so I learned that principle early on, and I had a good management team as we grew the business. And my father had said to me, the impossible we do right away, and the miraculous is going to take us a little longer, which was that whole drive to get it figured out. But it comes through collaboration with people. And so we would go to people that had an understanding, let's say if it was a specific accounting or marketing around the world. And we humble ourselves and just ask the question, how do you do that? And I'd get good feedback, and I'd get good feedback from my managers, and then we would debate the different issues. And so we were really sharpening iron to get the best decision. And I think God really blessed that. I used to always say to my team, we need to hire the best, not people that are just want a job, but the best, because and a lot of times managers won't do that, Mike, because they're afraid of being shown up, being brighter than maybe the manager. But I always wanted the best because I wanted them to be smarter than me in the different areas of the business. And I think that really proved out over time.
We're going to come back and talk more about the business. Just before we go to the break, Richard, you've written the book called Going Big. And the book says Lessons on Success in Business, Life, and Faith. Why did you call it Going Big?
Yeah, that was a collaborative effort by my editor, myself, and it's really about going big in your faith. And so that was why. And then if you get into it, there's different things I had done that would indicate I choose to go with a bigger vision. So going big and intermixing my faith and raising a family and all of that mixed in. So that's how we came up with the title Going Big. And it really points to faith in what God can do.
We're going to go back in just a moment and talk more with Richard, but right now you're watching The Perspective. We're so glad that you're with us today. And if at any time in your struggle, you can call the phone number at the bottom of the screen right now, 855-910-6297. There are people there to pray with you, to talk with you. You might be going through an incredibly challenging time and you're wondering, how do I process this? And is there hope? Is there anyone that will talk to me? And we have people standing by to talk to you, to pray with you and encourage you. Or you can write me at theperspective.tv. I'm going to be back with Richard Magnussen in his book called Going Big in just a moment. I'm here today with Richard Magnussen, and his book is called Going Big, and it's an incredible book. I want to encourage you to write to us. We're the first 10 people that write in. We're going to give you a free copy. We'll send it right to your door as long as Canada Post is working. But Richard, when you think about the company that God has allowed you to lead and you've passed on to your family, what are a couple of favorite stories that come to mind?
Well, I've got so many, but I think if I zero in at the very beginning when we were very small, I needed business. I needed to go on the road selling, but I needed to come back every night and work on the business because it was so small. But I remember getting enough nerve to go into Leon's, which is a furniture store in Canada, and there were about 5 stores at the time, which is big at the time in the 70s. And I remember meeting with the owner, one of the brothers, Ed Leon, and when I looked in hindsight, I kind of smiled to myself. I didn't really have a lot to offer him, but what I think he saw was somebody that was ambitious and was willing to adapt to what the need of the furniture industry was. And he showed me how I could match my coffee tables and end tables to upholstery that they were selling. And then that's where that room setting comes in, and they marketed to buy the sofa and the whole complete living room furniture. And so I started doing that, and it was very, very successful for Leon's and for myself. And so basically what I learned from that is you got to listen to the customer. I didn't really understand it to the degree, but if I look on hindsight, that's one-on-one of business is listening to your customers. And they were a tough buying organization, but a lot of respect for the family. And they had grown huge in Canada, and they actually own the brick as well. But it was that's a story that I smile at today on how God used that and giving me enough nerve to go in and meet with them when I was so small. I really didn't have the product offering to give them.
Let me interject. So you talked about being an ambitious person. Did you ever get frustrated with people around you if they weren't as ambitious? And how did you process that? Or how did you give them a nudge?
Well, a lot is leading by example. And I was pretty, I was working hard and I was very collaborative. So I wanted to listen to people. They worked for me and get their ideas. And then together we would execute them. But what I did was we gave a report monthly to the employees when we became a certain size, and we put them on profit sharing. So I created a team, but also I backed it up with the better the company does, the better they do. And so, when I got into a meeting, there was no stupid answers or stupid questions because you never know if someone has part of a question that's going to be really helpful. And I saw that happen many times. So I made people feel secure, but we all drove hard. And if I reflect back, sometimes people would leave the company, but it was more from pressure from the team that they maybe weren't contributing as much as what we needed. And so it was a team effort that really built the business, and they all got rewarded as we grew.
So let me ask you the tough question. How do you define success? Did the yardstick ever change through your time in business, and now you've entered into retirement, but you're still, aware of what's going on in the business with your family? How do you measure success then and now?
Well, for a company, success definitely has to do with finances. You've got a measuring stick are you profitable? And so to say, well, money isn't important. If you're running a business and you're not making money, you got a problem. And so I was very big on metrics. So we would measure performance on shipping, customer service, a lot of metrics that are important for any business. But success is not really just finances. I know a lot of people that are fairly wealthy, and some of them are not very happy. Money in itself is not drive that. I know many people have heard that, but I've seen it in lives. I'll tell you what is, if we can do something for somebody else, help an organization, and I focus on a lot of ministries that can be successful at reaching people. That is really quite exciting to be able to participate in helping people. And that's true whether it's a personal situation, someone really desperately needs a fridge, or those are really exciting times, and they really give you a really good feeling that you're more than just racking up money. And so that is a net result of that. But money itself does not make you feel great.
We only have so much time. I'm going to ask you to touch on maybe the raw nerve. You live some of your time in Canada and in the States. You have connections throughout the world. You got some advice for us today as we look at the financial climate and the uncertainty that continually is being talked about in the news? How would you advise people?
Well, I just left the meeting this morning with a bunch of businessmen that are dealing with this. And I can just use a story example I use in the book of in 2008. We lost about 40% of our business overnight, with business being very difficult. And it was actually through those difficulties where we made our organization stronger. We re-engineered a lot of areas, and within a year we became very strong financially, as well as getting more market share. So sometimes difficult times, and I think we're going through that now, we can blame the U.S. or we can blame somebody else, but I think we really have to reflect on how can we improve what we're doing. And I've seen so many people become victims. They always are the victim. And I try and get by that. What can I learn through this? And so many times it was difficulties in my business that actually helped me think through a better way of doing it. And so the scripture's clear on trials. We're to love them. And that's a tough one. But through it, God often changes our hearts, changes our lives, and even changes our business as we work through difficulties.
Richard, that's a great place for us to pause for today. And I just want to say you're listening to Richard Magnussen, who is the author of this amazing book that we want to make available to you today. Richard, thanks for speaking into our lives. And I look forward to having you back on the program. Always have enjoyed our last conversation today, even more so. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a joy on my part.
You're watching The Perspective today. I'm going to be back in just a moment to share with you from God's Word. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Did you know you can stream our shows on demand? We are thrilled to announce the launch of our channel on Roku TV. You can now watch The Perspective shows anytime you like and navigate through a variety of playlists. How to find us? Simply search for The Perspective channel, find our logo screen, and save it under your channels of choice on your Roku selection menu. Don't miss out. New feature shows will be updated weekly.
Are you one of those people that it seems like sometimes you have to learn the same lesson over and over again and then you kick yourself? Today, as we continue on in the conversation about what it means to be a disciple of Jesus, we're going to take us back to the drawing board. And I think one of the powerful things we've taken away from listening to Richard share his amazing story is the times that he had to go back to the drawing board to be reminded that God is more than faithful, that God will bring us through, whether we're talking business, whether we're talking family issues. I want to encourage you today to hold on. But let's go back to the drawing board today to be reminded, not because you have a bad memory, but perhaps because we haven't taken the lessons to heart that we needed to. You know, being a follower of Jesus, what it meant in the days of the early disciples was following Jesus as if he was the rabbi, the one who was the teacher. And you model yourself after him. You follow him. And as some of you have seen in the introduction to one of the Bible studies I wrote, is that you need to make sure that the dust of the rabbi is on your clothes. That's how close you need to stay to them. But sometimes we're slow to learn, aren't we? And we don't apply what the master has already taught us. We're going to go back. We're going to relearn some things today. We're going to read out of Matthew chapter 14. Let's listen to this passage. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went to them walking on the lake. And when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said. And they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, hey, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. And that's when Peter said, well, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. And Jesus said, come. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came towards Jesus. But then guess what happened? When he saw the wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, will you save me? And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down, and those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. Now, why did they have to relearn this lesson? They had already experienced Jesus calming the storms. And even Peter, when he made that brave move to step out in faith, keep thinking about this. You've got to keep your eyes on Jesus. The writer of the book of Hebrews said, think about Jesus, considering the one who's gone before us. Keep your eyes fixed on him. Constantly we see the Lord demonstrating his power, and we see that incredibly here in this passage. But prior to this, he'd fed the multitudes, and there was just a ton of miracles that were simply mind-boggling, and yet the disciples still doubted, and they were prone to fear and panic. Does that sound familiar, like you and me? Well, it does for me, but I'm trying to learn this thing. God, I want to be reminded of what you did yesterday so that I will walk in faith today. How do you see the Lord and the difference that he's made in your life in the past? Are you believing in him for today, that Jesus is more than enough? What difference has he made? Rather than what difference have you let him make in your life? That's a big differentiating part. Not just what difference has Jesus made, but what are you letting him make different in your life right now? When a problem comes, does your mind just race and fear grab hold of you? Or do you choose to say, no, I'm going to hold on to the promises of God? Yeah, the wind and the waves look pretty high, but God has said he will be faithful. He will walk with me. Hey, have you ever just paused and simply thanked the Lord that he is with you? I know a couple experiences and the waves were just going over my head, and I had to choose and just say, Lord, I want to thank you that you're with me. I want to thank you that you are here. That's what he says to Peter. He says, Peter, take heart. And the disciples had to learn this lesson several times over. Man, they're a little thick on the skull, weren't they? A little bit like you, a whole lot like me. But Jesus comes to them and he says, don't be afraid. He invites you and I to take courage. Because why? Because he is there. And then when Jesus calls Peter to come to him, and Peter is overwhelmed, what does Jesus do? He reaches out his hand and he takes him and he draws him to himself. Jesus is not going to let you go. He's not going to let me go. He's waiting for us to call out to him right now, today.
Hi, I'm Ryan Walter, and during my 15-year NHL career, I signed the odd autograph, especially in Montreal. I remember once there was a young boy, and I signed my name, and then I put John 3:16 next to it, underneath it. And he looked up at his dad, and he said, Dad, he's wrong. My name's not John, and it's 3:30. I love that story. You know what I love about John 3:16 is that God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son. Love that idea. You know where I've been going recently, though, is to John 3:17. Right? Where in 16 he sent, but in 17 he says, I didn't send. I didn't send my son to judge the world. I sent my son to save the world. Love that thought.
As we're talking about business and ministry, we have to recognize the fact that we're living in turbulent times. People are wondering about their financial security, and it's so easy to be overwhelmed by fear. We can see the difficult moments and say, how am I going to get through? One of the things Richard Magnussen will tell you in his book, as he's been reading scripture and that we share all the time here in The Perspective, is that God has promised to be our refuge and strength, a present help in time of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. I want to invite you to place your trust in Jesus. If you're overwhelmed by fear, write to me at theperspective.tv or call that number on your screen today. We have people here willing to pray with you, happy to pray with you, and to talk with you more about knowing Christ.